Well, thank you everyone out there. We can't see you, but oh, Zach's on. Hi, Zach. It's nice to uh, be here with you all, even though we can't see you, but we're excited to be able to offer this. And this is our third installation, or installment, I should say, of our Healing Art series in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. We kicked off the series with Lauhala Mat from Flo Kako, who shared simple movements that we could do daily to help us ground, connect, and express. Last week, we had music therapist Patricia Blair, who gave us a background on the field of music therapy and shared with us how music could be used as a tool for relaxation and self-care. Before we introduce our presenter for today, a quick introduction of myself and of the Hawaiʻi Arts Alliance, which is one of the two hosts of this program today. My name is Dr. Sarah Misbon. I'm the Community Wellness Director at the Hawaiʻi Arts Alliance. The Alliance was founded in 1980 with a mission to engage and transform communities by supporting and cultivating creativity through the arts. We are the state captain for the Americans for the Arts and a member of the State Arts Advocacy Network. And we advocate for all disciplines and genres. To date, we have 5 areas of programming: arts education with programs like Turnaround Arts Hawaiʻi, arts collaboration and with organizations like State Foundation on Culture and the Arts, fiscal sponsorships for programs like Powwow Hawaii, and the Performing Arts Learning Centers across the state, a creative arts network to support and advocate for the needs of our Hawaii-based artists, and community programs like Creative Wellness, the one which this Healing Arts series falls underneath. We launched the Creative Wellness Initiative to address the topic of mental health and wellness through the use of arts and creative advocacy. The arts are an essential aspect of our lifelong development and overall health, and we are developing programs that use the arts to help reduce stigma and the impact of mental illness while promoting wellness. We are grateful to work alongside organizations like Mental Health America of Hawaii. It's through these collaborations that we can expand and reach and provide the essential support needed in our communities. For more information about the Creative Wellness Program, you can email me at the email that you see there, sarah@hawaiiartsalliance.org. For more information about the Alliance, you can visit our website or email us at arts@hawaiiartsalliance.org, or find us on social media from those handles, and we will send all this to you so that you will have that readily accessible. Now I will turn it over to Dr. Mistisa Goss to share about Mental Health America of Hawaii.
Thank you, Sarah. So we are very lucky to be able to work with Hawaiʻi Arts Alliance to bring you the Healing Arts series. A little bit about Mental Health America of Hawaii. We've been around for over 75 years. We work on education, advocacy, and training all around improving mental wellness, mental health, and also decreasing stigma. So we have a lot of different things that we're working on. I know that we are in a difficult situation in terms of we're all transitioning either back to work or working from home and have different things that are happening that are new, and we do have some things that are available for you. So we have our website, which is at mentalhealthhawaii.org. If you're looking to get connected with other resources, you can go there. We have screenings available, online resources, and different things that you can find that maybe you're looking for, but you can also call us. We are available. Some of us are working remotely, but we're always available for the work hours. Our Oahu number is listed below at the 521-1846. We also have our Maui County office at 242-6461. I know you may have some questions after the presentation, and sometimes, like for myself, it comes up much later after the presentation, so feel free to message us. Also knowing that you're going to get a recording of this, so you can connect to us through that, but also you can just email us at info@mentalhealthhawaii.org. We do have some social media accounts going. Facebook at Mental Health America of Hawaii has 3 groups there as well, and so you can find our Busy Bees Keiki activities, our MHAH book club, and then one specific for MH Maui. We also have our Instagram, which is the Live in the Now, that has specifically self-care pieces, and you can check all that out. We also have downloadable pieces that are available on our website.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Disa. So I'm excited to introduce you to our presenter for today's Healing Arts series. Laurel Nakanishi is a writer and educator from Honolulu, Hawaii. She's the author of a prize-winning book, Ashore. Her poetry and essays have been featured and appeared, in various literary magazines and has received grants from the Fulbright Foundation and Japan-US Foundation Friendship Commission. Laurel works as a teaching artist in our island schools. I have had the pleasure of watching Laurel work with our students at Turnaround Arts specifically and other school-based programs that the Alliance works with. And she's just a really natural way of making writing accessible and enjoyable for everyone. So we're very excited to have her here today to share poetry writing opportunities. And before we get into that, just a quick disclaimer and some housekeeping items, and then we'll jump right in.
So for a disclaimer, we just wanted to let everyone know that our Healing Arts series is not art therapy. We want to let you know that because some people might be logging in and thinking that that was going to be part of it, that it would have a therapeutic piece to it that was clinical, but this is really about providing information and giving you an experience with art itself. If you are interested in learning more about art therapy, we do have some resources where you can go to look for an art therapist specifically. You can go to arttherapy.org, psychologytoday.com, or atcb.org. We know that for some people, when you are learning to express in different types of ways, whether it's through song or dance or art and in the written word, that sometimes a lot of difficult feelings can come up for you. So you want to make sure that you have these numbers available if you start to feel unsafe. We have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's at 1-800-273-8255, and also our local crisis line for Oahu you would call 832-3100. Neighbor Islands is toll free at 1-800-753-6879. If you need these numbers later on during our presentation, please feel free to ask any of the panelists and we'll be able to provide you with those numbers. And I'm going to hand this over to our wonderful Amanda Martinez, who helps us with tech because we're not all that savvy. Thank you, Amanda, for giving us a Zoom 101 for those who may not be as familiar.
Of course, no problem. Thank you so much. So for today's Zoom webinar format, everyone's cameras as well as microphones are automatically turned off, so don't worry about accidentally turning anything on. That should not happen. We will be encouraging participation and interaction. So there's a few different ways that you are able to do this. Firstly, if you have any questions about anything that is being talked about or any of the topics, there is a Q&A feature on your screens. Any questions that you have, it's easier for us to kind of track those through there. So just go ahead and drop any questions in that Q&A box, and we'll dedicate some time at the end to address any questions that may come up. You also have a chat box feature on your screens. This is where you'll be able to interact with us as panelists as well as each other as participants. So if you send a message to all panelists, then only us four will be able to see that message. However, if you send a message to all panelists and attendees, then everyone who is logged on to this webinar will be able to see that message. So let's practice a little bit. Why don't we have everyone, if you feel comfortable doing so, just dropping your name and maybe your location in the chat box really quickly. And that could be to all panelists or to all panelists and attendees, your choice. Awesome. Right, I see people from Kauai, Maui, Oahu, different parts of Oahu. Super wonderful. I love seeing all of this. I see another Amanda there too. That's a great name. Cool. Great. Awesome. So
from Florida.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Great. So one other thing, towards the end of the webinar session, we will be dropping a link to the evaluation for the post follow-up. Feel free to click on that and fill it out. But if you happen to miss it, that's okay. It'll be included in the follow-up email. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our session today.
Great, wonderful. So thank you all so much for being here. Just want to do a quick check. How's the sound? Sounds okay, Amanda? Yes, okay, great, good to know. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Sara. Okay, so thank you for being a part of this community, even though we can't see one another. I know that you're here, and I'm really happy that you're here. This webinar is going to be based around kind of creating a supportive and generative environment. So we're going to steer away from the judgmental and the criticism and really focus in on just getting our ideas out there. And so I want to invite you just now just to get a little bit loose. Like, think about delving in, giving yourself permission to delve into the process of writing and not to worry too much about the product right now. And I find that oftentimes it's a lot easier said than done, right? To think about the process without the product in life and in writing itself too. So oftentimes, like, I have all these plans, I have these ideas about the way I want things to go. And it's difficult to let go of that and kind of embrace the unknown a little bit more. And, you know, oftentimes when I'm writing a poem, what happens is, you know, sometimes I feel some pressure to have it turn out a certain way. But when I embrace the process, I really give myself some space to see maybe some potentials that were not apparent initially. And oftentimes when I'm finished writing a poem, it turns out completely different than what I was expecting. And sometimes there are some surprises in there, like insights and wisdom that I didn't know I had, but the poem was teaching me. So I want to just make some space for that in this webinar. What we're going to do is I'm just going to share some ideas with you all. We're going to do a couple of writing activities. And then at the end, there'll be some time to share, if you feel comfortable, through the chat function. And so I just want to jump into, I'm going to start sharing my screen here. All right. So I want to start off by sharing a little bit of my story and my writing journey, and then we'll kind of move into the writing our stories. I'm looking forward to hearing your stories as well. So a little bit about me. I was a really shy kid, and growing up, I'm dyslexic too, so I did not take to writing right away. Like, that's an understatement. It was terrible. But it's something that kind of slowly grew and awakened in me. And because I was a kind of quiet kid and teenager, I found myself journaling a lot. And I really relished this space of journaling because it felt like I could write anything. I could express any idea or emotion, and the page would just always be there to absorb it. And, you know, I oftentimes, and still yet, I do a lot of journaling. And often it's when I'm feeling some kind of overwhelming sense of emotion, something that I just can't quite understand or get a grip on. That's when I turn to journaling. And usually through writing about it, writing through it, I find that I can then go back and read over and figure out what I really think or what I know. It was a way to kind of know myself some more. So on the slide, there's a picture of me as a real little kid and then me as a teenager doing that journaling. And kind of that practice has been a part of my life for a while. So I'm curious, for folks who are in the room here, I wonder if you have journaled before, or what your relationship with journaling is. So the amazing Amanda has a poll for us that I think will just like pop up on your screen. And if you could take a moment just to answer for where you're at right now, do you or have you journaled? And it's anonymous, we can't see who puts what. So I'm just curious how we're feeling about it. We'll give you just a couple of moments to put your answers, and then afterwards we'll get to see kind of where people are at with journaling. Okay, let's see where we're at. Well, interesting. Okay, so looks like we have some folks that have a regular journaling practice, or a practice that comes into play when they can, when they're able to. Some folks that maybe want to, some folks that's not really part of their practice, and some folks that maybe are not quite familiar with what journaling is or how to do it. Okay, cool. I like that we have a broad spectrum of folks in this room. That's great. So for my journey, you know, I started off with journaling and just having it be purely for myself. I wasn't going to share any of these journals with anybody else. I just really wanted it to be my own space. But eventually, journaling kind of evolved into poetry for me. And, you know, there's a lot of things I love about poetry, but I think one of the first things that made me kind of fall in love with poetry is that it can play with language, you know, syntax and form and sound combinations, all of that. You know, poetry often gets to break language. And in that breaking, in that changing of how you see language, I feel like new expression, there's opportunities for new kinds of expression. And so one of the other things I found as I started to write more poetry, it was a way to take something that is internal and very personal to me and to move it into the external world. And there was something really empowering about feeling like I could articulate what exactly I was thinking or feeling. And in moving this emotion and this idea, this experience into something external, it was that transformation into art. It became this new thing, and this poem was something I wanted to share, and it was really one of the ways I like reached out to the rest of the world and felt in communion with it. And so again, just out of curiosity about folks in the room, how many people feel, you know, what's your relationship with poetry? Do you write poetry? And so I think we have another poll for you just to get a feeling, a temperature check in the room of, do you write poetry always, very often, sometimes, rarely, never before? Today might be the first. So take some time, think about what's true for you right now, and then we'll see where we're at. Okay, do we got it? So it looks like this one's a little bit more on the side of rarely, sometimes, and never. But some folks that are writing more regularly, and that's totally fine. I often encounter, especially amongst the adults that I work with, and teenagers as well, sometimes there's this funny baggage around poetry, and I think it comes from our school systems of feeling like there's a right way to do it, like there's a right answer to a poem, and somehow it's like in code, and you have to like decode it so you can understand the poem. And I find that is not true for me and my relationship with poetry. I feel like it's a really exciting, playful way to interact with words. So we're gonna kind of bring that sense of play into it today. And you know, everybody's journey with writing is different. And I'm hoping, you know, I'm offering poetry today because I feel like it can be a space of reflection and expression and a way to connect. At least that's what it did for me. And it does for me now. And there is also a lot of research that shows that expressive writing can be very helpful in all sorts of health indicators. So one of the, there's a lot out there, but one of the studies I wanted to show is by James Pennebaker. And it shows that the use of expressive writing for just just 15 minutes a day for 4 days has positive health effects. So I think that's kind of cool. I was excited to find this study because it seems like, you know, you don't have to write a poem and like have it be this published thing. And you don't have to write like every single day for the next year of your life. It can just be a little bit of that kind of touching down, and that still is super helpful. So we're gonna do it today. Let's try it. Are you with me? I don't know, because I'm just staring at my screen, but I know you're there. Okay, so our first exercise today, and this is just kind of like warm up and touch down. And I want us to start shifting the way we think about words just a little bit. So words are really versatile, right? And we use them all the time. And usually it's pretty practical. So we use words to communicate, we make lists, we have reminders and memos and emails. But one of the cool things about poetry is it helps us step into another space with words. And so in this space, you can have reflection, you can work with articulation. And one example from my life is this little poster. It was in our kitchen, but I brought it over to my office to show you all. And this is something I just made a week into being in isolation in my house. And I just put up this question, what brings you joy? And next to it, there's a stack of Post-it notes. And then myself and my partner have been every so often putting up a Post-it note of things that bring us joy. So some are like, you know, something a little bit more heady, like being alive today, or papayas, or my partner put la playa con la familia, being at the beach with family. So all of these just little reminders of joy. And one of the things that was important for me is to kind of, again, thinking about process. So stepping away from a product, which is I have a tendency to want like pretty products, but stepping away from that product and thinking about writing as being like a living document. So this is something that's always changing, doesn't have to be perfect. And it's a reminder of those joys in my life, but also I find it's helping me like hone my ability to notice joy. So like if you're working on a muscle, right? And it gets stronger the more you do it. So we're gonna try it right now on your paper or something that you're gonna write on, and with your writing utensil. I want you to answer the question, what brings you joy? Or maybe even if that's really big, just think about today, this morning. What's one thing that brought you joy? And so I want you just to write it down. Oops, I'm gonna go back. Sorry. Just go ahead and write it down. If you have any questions, you can chat them to me in the box, and I'll be happy to answer those questions. Otherwise, I'll just give you a minute. We can write down one of those things. Nice. And folks are already doing what I was about to ask y'all, is to, if you feel comfortable, sharing some of your joys in our chat box. So what I see here is, let me go. All right. My joy is walking at sunrise. Oh, nice one, Danielle. Donna says, hearing my grandchildren who live in California. Juna says puns. Yes, playing with those words. Monica is walking the dogs. Crystal is family. Maggie says the ocean, hearing from friends and loved ones. Elizabeth says connecting with wild animals. Very cool. Courtney says poi donuts. My coworkers brought into work today. Oh, lucky. Lauren says having a moment of calm and stillness. Riley says spending time outside and connecting with family. Elizabeth says fresh cut organic watermelon. Yum. Brian says my dog and cake. Maliola, oh, I know you, hi. Hearing my punahele sing me a song over FaceTime. Oh. David says cooking and eating a wonderful meal, sharing with my wife and friends. Diana says today we got reservation confirmed for a holiday weekend with family Aulani. Oh, awesome. Amanda says the smell of rain. Oh, picking up on those senses, yeah? Another sense, Beth is saying music. Melinda connecting with my children. Zach taking time to meditate. Lisa says paint on paper. Melissa laying in clean sheets. Yeah. Neilani says my joy is slowing down and focusing on what's important to me. Nature, family, friends. Brotoa Sal says prayer, praise, and worship. Yeah, music, church, smiles, and laughter. Last one, Cheryl says moving slow in the morning tai chi among the palm trees with sunlight and the leaves and feeling one. Awesome. Thank you for sharing, folks who did. And folks who didn't, I know you have those joys in you too. So if you want, this could just be the first iteration, the first joy in your joy poster. If you want to turn that into something you put on your fridge or your wall, or something that you practice noticing and touching into throughout your days and inviting your family into as well. So thank you for that. And we're gonna just transition over and do a little bit more writing, moving into another writing opportunity. And so oftentimes, being a writer, people ask me about writer's block. If I experience it, and oftentimes it feels like people tell me their stories of writer's block. And when I think about writer's block, I think about it more as like a question of permission. So when I'm writing, oftentimes I have these doubts. And so I'm thinking to myself, is this any good? Will people like it? Who am I to be a writer anyway? Like, you know, it's there. Those doubts are there. And sometimes these self-doubts and this kind of feeling of pressure can make it difficult to write, to even take that first step of writing. And I find that in these times, I try to focus on giving myself permission. So permission to write just terribly, permission to explore without like a clear idea of where I'm going, permission to like just trust in that process and feel like that process is worthwhile too, not just the product. How anti-capitalist of me, right? It's about the process too though. And you know, if I have that permission, if I feel like there's space for me, then when I come to the page, it feels like that page is a confidant and that we're in this relationship together where I can really just be myself and explore. So today I want to give you permission to just write anything, right? To let yourself have that space to explore. It's so essential, right? Having that space. And then I am going to give you a prompt though, because it's nice to have something to go off of, some ground to jump off of. So this prompt has us thinking about our own stories in our life, the power of our stories. And this activity kind of touches on narrative therapy, which is a therapeutic approach that focuses on the power of our stories and narratives and the ways that those stories and narratives develop our identity and the lens through which we see the world. And one of the cool things about stories is that you get to choose how you tell them and what you tell within them, right? You know, you have that control over those narratives. So what our prompt is going to be today, so get ready for some more writing. Our prompt is going to be today is to think about your life incrementally. So think about the span of your life, and we're going to be choosing just moments within it as you're going along. And I'm going to ask you to try to choose a couple of moments that you feel like were meaningful to you, that shaped you in some way. And I know that seems quite large, right? So here are just a couple of examples. So the prompt is to write one line or sentence for each event or moment that has shaped your life. And, you know, we're not going to have a ton of time. I know there's a lot of things that probably happened in your life, but think of this as just a start. And so here are a couple of examples. At age 3, kind of going back to one of my first memories, I wrote, my mom carries me down the stairs to our front door, where my brother waits with his hands outstretched. Can I hold her? He asks, and I feel an immediate revulsion. And that's how my issues with my brother started. And then age 5, it is my birthday sleepover, but the other girls will not be quiet. Awake long into the night, I wish I could tell them all to go home. So those are just 2 little moments I picked out from my childhood. So again, they don't have to be, you know, somehow like huge, right? They can be small moments that are just kind of touchstones within your life story and lifespan. And then after you write that one sentence, move on to the next event. And we're just gonna give you, see what time it is now, the next couple of minutes to work on this. And I encourage you just to give yourself some space. Don't judge what comes out, just like write one, move on to the next one, write another memory, move on to the next one. And if you have any questions, because I know this can be kind of, it's a little bit more tricky of a prompt, let me know through the chat function and I'll be happy to answer any questions. I'm gonna stop talking so you can actually write now, okay? So it looks like some people are gathering some of those moments, and that's great. So some folks are putting them into the chat to share. Thank you so much. That's awesome. If you want to share one of those lines or one of those sentences, that'd be great. And at the end of our time, I'll read them out so that everybody can hear those spoken out loud. And go ahead if you want to read through. We're going to have just another 4 minutes. And for folks that are already kind of generating some of these moments, these images, I challenge you to think, what more can you find, right? So thinking about moving on, what more can you generate? This is going to be maybe the beginning of some seeds that could become many different things. But challenge yourself in this 4 more minutes. You know, it's not a lot of time, so go ahead and just think about free writing out a couple more of those sentences, and we'll check back in just a little bit. Okay, so think about putting your last couple of ideas down, last couple of words. And if it doesn't seem like enough time right now, which it's probably not, it's only been 10 minutes, you could put a couple of notes to yourself about where your thoughts were going and kind of what you were thinking about, what was coming to you, so that you don't lose that if you want to come back to it later. And so I've been reading through these comments, and oh my gosh, you guys, you're amazing. Like all of these just really rich moments, these powerful moments, and the way you're writing about them, I feel like you're able to transport us into those places with you as well. So one of the things I love about this prompt is that in beginning to write these little flashes of memories and images, you can kind of start to see how you moved from there to hear, right? You get a little bit more of a sense of these different parts of your own story and the ways that they can build up into a narrative. And especially when you think, you know, if you're just beginning to jump into it, what do you write about? There's so much there already. And so I hope that even in the short amount of time, just getting some of these ideas, these experiences onto the page, maybe is a kind of invitation to see the potential for any one of these moments. They could bloom into a poem, they could bloom into a short story, or a memoir, or a story you tell out loud to your family and friends. Maybe you kind of touch into some way of thinking about if it wants to grow into something else, that's wonderful. If it wants to just stay that sentence or two on the page, that's what is fine too. That's great. And so, yeah, I echo what Sarah said, just beautiful moments. And thank you for sharing some of your stories with us. I wanted to just kind of make sure, you know, it's an interesting format. This is my first webinar, so I've never just spoken into a screen before, even though I know you're there. But one of the things I feel like that is powerful about poetry is that it asks us to inhabit our bodies as well as our minds. So oftentimes poetry is meant to be read out loud. And when you read something out loud, you have your breath in it, right? And that poetry gets to play with words, it plays with that breath, it centers kind of in the body. And so because of that, I want to just go through, and I feel like we probably don't have time for me to read out loud all of the lines that you shared. And thank you for sharing these moments. They're so powerful. But I wanted to just read out loud a little bit of it so that we can hear these words out loud too, spoken out loud, inhabited in the body. So I'm scrolling through, I'm just gonna like, because I've been reading as they've been coming in, they're all just really wonderful, but I wanna just like scroll through at random. So from Crystal, my little bro knocking on my bedroom door to ask if he could sleep with me while he go through some night insecurities. Thanks. And this is from Ellen, going to Kapalua Beach and actually going into the water to relax and enjoy doing nothing but floating and moving with the tide and enjoying life. Beautiful memory. From Donna, leaving Kauai for my first visit, after my first visit, and feeling like my heart was gonna break. And then Crystal is saying, I might have read one from Crystal before, so I'm gonna go up to Barry. The birth of my daughter opened a part of my heart I didn't know existed, and the experience of unconditional love. And scroll down to Maliola, age 18, tasting Paris with hot beignet in the Jardin de Luxembourg, so I can't speak French, melting into mauve meditations before the watercolors of Monet, savoring the invitation of Charles Baudelaire to voyage into the exotic world of poetry. I'll read one last one, I'm just gonna sit down. This is Elizabeth, finally being allowed to roll my wheelchair onto the rooftop lounge area of the Children's Hospital. I felt the profound distinction of being free to be outside because I had to live inside the hospital. Wow. Oh gosh, so much there. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. It's just so lovely. And even the ones I didn't read out loud too, I've been looking over. And folks who didn't want to put their poem pieces in the chat, but still you're working on them, I hear you too. I know it's there. So as our time kind of draws down, I'm just curious, because we have all sorts of folks with different experiences, different practices. And since we're kind of working on building a community, I'm curious, as far as your practice goes, is there anything that you would want to share about your writing process or things that might have been helpful to you as you started a writing process or an arts process, just so we can kind of maybe gain some inspiration and ideas from other folks? So if you want to go ahead and put those in the chat, thinking about what has been helpful to you in writing and in expression. And I know there's other artists in the room too, so if you want to talk about another art. And as you're thinking and writing, this is a picture of one of my students from Nicaragua, and she's sharing her poem. And I love how kids just like launch into sharing and poetry. It gives me a lot of inspiration. So Melissa says, free writing, nice, in small timed increments and then not reading it for some time. Yeah, I do that a lot too. And so for folks who might not be familiar, free writing is where you let yourself just write anything. Some people say don't move your pen or pencil from the paper. Even if you have to write, I don't know what to write, you just keep on going. And then letting that kind of just sit for a while. Awesome. So Courtney's saying, start simple. She's starting simple. Oh, I lost it again. And writing every night this year, I do 5 things I'm grateful for. Yeah, so that gratitude and working out that gratitude muscle. Thanks, Courtney. So Donna says, I sit down to write and I'm often surprised at what comes out. Definitely. It's like taps into all sorts of surprising things. Zach says, feeling the words and transmitting their personalities helps me bring them to life visually. That's very cool. So thinking about all the ways words can not only pick up on ideas, but all of our senses too. Terry says, visualization and a thesaurus. You're getting all those really delicious words with that thesaurus. Sada says, writing has helped me learn that I am more than my brain and often lets me think I am. Yeah, so that potential, right? Juno says, I use Facebook Notes, adjust the privacy settings, and easy for on the go, often mind map before writing too, right? So getting to catch those ideas and not just letting them go off and finding ways to do that. Elizabeth says, just pausing for a while and being open to what comes and beginning, stop when it stops and coming back to it whenever. Sometimes it never is finished. Yeah, it's true. It just kind of goes on, which is beautiful too, right? You don't have to worry about it ending. Danielle says, I've written 3 books. Woohoo! The first one was poetry. The next 2 are my memoirs. I do not believe in writer's block. I've written a lot of bad stuff to get to something. I would keep practice and persistence. Definitely that practice of it, right? And diligence. Lisa is the permission to express anything. Maliola, studying with Janice Redmond really brought me much closer to poetry. Incorporating poetry into my teaching helps me keep in touch with my own writing. And I love studying with passionate teachers. Thanks, like me. Mahalo to everyone here too. So as we kind of think about closing, I want to respect your time too. Here are just some ideas if you want to jumpstart a writing practice, some things you might be able to do. So I know folks already said you could try free writing, and sometimes having just a set amount of time to free write can be very helpful. Just because it's like less intimidating. You could find an old photo and describe it. So that's kind of like an ekphrastic exercise to have words and images going together. You could write a letter to a person or to a place that you don't intend on sending and saying what you want to say to that person or to that place. You could choose a picture from the Hawaii State Art Museum or another art archive, and think about, imagine stepping into it and what would you see there, what would you feel there, kind of accessing those senses. Or you could go back to a conversation you've had in the past and begin your writing with what I did not say is, and kind of have a potential for more expression, right? And we're talking about giving yourself permission to write what you want to write in a safe setting, in that setting. And so you can do that. And we'll send this out, but here are just some further readings, some suggestions. So Ross Gay has this book of delights, which is delightful. It's wonderful. There's some prompts, there's some visual art, and also poets.org has a wonderful poetry series where they have different poets reading their work, and I've just been loving it. And so I think, Sara, did you have something you wanted to touch base with people about before we close it?
I just want to say thank you. That was really great. I felt really emotional just reading. Well, first of all, just even going into my own, it's amazing what comes up, right? When you put yourself in a place where you're just letting yourself free write. I didn't imagine that image coming to my head. It just came out of nowhere, and it was really beautiful moment to reconnect with, even though it was a little bit painful, but it was also lovely to share that. And there was something really powerful in connecting even though we don't see each other, even though we're so far apart, there was something really powerful in that connection with one another, in that sharing of stories. And I think, as you mentioned, in narrative therapy, our stories are everything that we are. And so it's so powerful to have a way for us to share those things with one another, and writing and poetry is such an amazing way to do that. So thank you so much for helping us access that, and to share different ways that we can do that. And I really hope that we can take some of these new skills that we've learned, or even if they were there already, to keep fostering them, and to keep writing and share with one another our stories, because I think that's really what will bring us closer together, reduce the stigma of like difficult things, challenges that we experience in our lives, and learn that we all have experiences that we go through, and we're in it together. So thank you, Laurel, so much. We're very close to the end. I want to leave a little bit of space. Laurel's willing to stay a little bit longer if anyone has any questions for her. We're going to drop before anyone takes off, if you can quickly fill out our evaluation. It'll be really quick. We just want to be able to know if there's anything that we can do in the future that will help make these programs stronger, or even just more accessible, where we can we want your feedback. So if you don't mind, we're going to drop I don't know if Amanda already dropped it in, but into the Zoom
chat.
The chat, thank you, and Q&A, and then there it is. Thank you so much, Amanda. And then if anyone has any questions, if you have to go, we understand, but if you have any questions, please stick around. We'll hang out for a little bit, so that Laurel you'll have some space to ask her some questions. So thanks again, Laurel, for being here.
And then I just want to say, I know I want to be respectful of your time. If you have to go, but you still wanted to like connect in some way or ask questions, that's my website. And on the website, there's a contact form that'll go right into my email. And I'd be happy to, if you have to leave right now, just over email, answer any questions you might have. But if you have time right now, I'll stick around. If you have any questions or just want to share some of your experiences. And we're looking in the, oh, nice. Okay, great. So for questions, guys, are we looking in the Q&A or are we doing the chat?
I think that we're just looking at the chat. It looks like, yeah, I think most people are just thanking you. So that's nice.
There's no questions in the Q&A yet. I'll look.
Okay, thanks for looking.
And
thank you all.
Wonderful.
I see the survey now.
The question came in. Elizabeth asks, how do you know when a poem is finished?
That's a really good question. And I think it depends on the person. So it's hard to, I know it's kind of not great to hear, but I think it really depends on your writing process. For me, how I know when a poem is finished like sometimes for me it takes a really long time, so I'll let poems sit by themselves and not touch them for years and then come back just because I feel like I have fresh eyes on it. But sometimes it feels like in my work that a poem, you know, I've gone through that process of discovering with it. It's sometimes changed in ways I never could have foreseen. It's taught me a lot of things, and then it feels like it's its own entity. It feels like it's kind of separate from me almost, and that's when I feel like it might be ready to be quote unquote finished. But you know, there's always room, right, for change, and things change all the time. And that kind of goes into publishing. So yeah, publishing is a tricky business. I think one of the things, and a former mentor of mine mentioned this, you know, when you publish poetry, there's usually never money in it. And in a lot of ways, that's really beautiful because you're away from the market, right? And so I have friends that write nonfiction and fiction, and sometimes it feels really constraining because their editor will say, you know, that's not going to sell right now. We want you to change it in this way. With poetry, there's a lot more freedom. I feel like there's also a lot of really wonderful small presses. Lot more and more. It's kind of like this lovely blooming of small presses, online magazines, and then these little presses that are starting up. So as far as publishing poetry, my main advice is to think about starting to read some of these magazines, finding ones that feel like a good fit. They're publishing poems that speak to you. You're excited about their work. I can, if you want some suggestions, you know, I can suggest some literary magazines at some other point. But after thinking about and like looking at these different venues, then you can start sending your work out. Usually every press or literary magazine will have a submit button or a submission section. Sometimes they only accept submissions certain times of the year. And you can try submitting there. If you have a whole manuscript that's like a book, it's ready to go. One way to do that, to kind of get that book out there, is there's a lot of contests for chapbooks, which are just mini books or bigger books. So those contests are open to everybody, and you can submit as over there. There's also, you know, people do self-publishing. I don't actually know that much about self-publishing, but I know that it is a thing that folks do. So hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, I think that's it, unless there are any other details about publishing. It's a tricky business. Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you, Laurel. And thanks, Ms. Disa. Yes, we have one more session next week. We hope you can join us then. And this has just been a really exciting series, and we're just so grateful for all of our presenters and for you, Laurel, for today's. And thank you all for joining us. We will have Dr. Manulani Meyer as our presenter next week. So we hope you can join us for that. And she will be talking about Ho'opono, the art of speaking truth. So I think that's a really great way to transition from this session. And I can see those two actually combining somehow. So who knows the future, what we can do with these wonderful artists and presenters. So thank you everyone for being here, and we'll see you next week, hopefully. And thanks again, Laurel.
Thank
you,
Laurel.
everybody. Thanks for your shares.